If someone right now just offered you a map, like a guaranteed map to a completely safe, comfortable, and, well-respected life.
Okay.
But the catch is, and this is a big catch, if you take the map, you can never, ever achieve your ultimate grandest dream, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Would you take it?
I mean, if you ask people that, instinctively they'll say no.
Right. Everyone says no.
Yeah, absolutely. But if you actually look at the statistics, like how human beings operate day to day, almost all of us already have. We took the map.
We took it.
We did. Because the map is legible. It offers certainty.
It's safe.
Exactly. You go to school, you get the degree, you take the job, you pay the mortgage. The path is incredibly well lit and it's socially approved.
Right.
But the moment you step off that map to pursue what you actually want, like your deepest, maybe most irrational aspiration, the road just goes completely dark. You are suddenly navigating by like a totally different unseen set of stars.
And that unseen navigation is exactly what we are unpacking today on this deep dive, because we have a really fascinating source document on the table today.
We do.
Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist.
Yeah.
And look, for decades, I feel like people have treated this text like a feel-good fable,
right.
Like a nice little bedtime story.
Right, like an inspirational quote on a poster.
Exactly. But if you actually pull it apart, which is what we're doing today, it is a literal masterclass in behavioral psychology, existential risk, and honestly, the absolute terror of leaving your comfort zone.
It really is terrifying.
Yeah. So we're looking at the story of this young Andalusian shepherd. His name is Santiago. But the mission today isn't just to recap a story about a kid wandering around the desert.
No, definitely not.
We are going to extract the actual underlying mechanisms here. We want to understand the architecture of ambition, the hidden traps of comfort, and this psychological concept the text calls the soul of the world. So where do we start with Santiago?
Well, to really grasp the weight of this whole thing, you have to look at his starting baseline, because he is not a desperate person trying to escape a miserable life.
Right.
And that is a crucial distinction. He's a boy who actively chose the life he has. Like, his parents wanted him to be a priest.
Which was a big deal back then.
Oh, huge.
Yeah.
In his agrarian society, being a priest is the ultimate status symbol. It represents complete stability and honor.
So he had it made.
He did. He went to seminary. He learned Latin. He had this perfectly safe path handed to him on a silver platter, and he just walked away from it.
Why?
Because he had a singular desire. He just wanted to travel. He wanted to see the world. So he bought a flock of sheep.
Right. So he literally chooses a lower status life specifically to buy his freedom.
Exactly.
And when we meet him in the text, he has actually optimized this life perfectly.
Oh, yeah. He's got it all figured out.
Yeah, he's got his sheep, which give him his purpose and his income. He's got a jacket for the cold nights.
Mm-hmm.
He has a book he literally uses as a pillow.
A very heavy book, presumably.
Yeah, right. And he's got this massive crush on a merchant's daughter in a town he only visits, like once a year.
Yeah.
He is, by all modern metrics, perfectly content. He has found his lane.
He has. But, contentment is often just a plateau that's disguised as a peak.
Ooh, I like that.
Right. And the disruption to his perfectly optimized life, it doesn't come from the outside.
It's not like a storm or something.
No, it's not an economic collapse or a drought that kills his sheep. The disruption is entirely internal. It arrives in the form of a recurring dream.
The dream.
Yeah. In this dream, a child takes him by the hand, transports him all the way to the pyramids of Egypt, and tells him, if you come here, you will find a hidden treasure.
Right.
But, and this is the worst part, he always wakes up just before the exact location is revealed.
Which is just maddening. Like, your subconscious gives you the destination, but refuses to give you the coordinates.
Exactly. It's teasing him.
And this sets up the central tension that I think we really need to explore here. Like, what actually happens to the human psyche when you are forced to choose between the absolute safety of the life you have already built and the terrifying, completely unproven uncertainty of a dream?
Yeah, and at first Santiago tries to just outsource that uncertainty.
Like we all do.
Right. He goes to a gypsy woman in the town of Tarifa, and he's hoping for like a simple magical interpretation. Just tell me what to do.
Right.
But she basically just tells him what he already knows. She says, go to Egypt. But then she adds a price tag.
Of course she does.
Yeah. She wants 1/10 of the treasure if he actually finds it.
Wow.
And Santiago leaves there feeling incredibly annoyed. He feels scammed, honestly.
I mean, I would too.
Right. So he decides the easiest psychological route is to just dismiss the dream entirely. He goes to a plaza, sits down, opens a new book, and prepares to just return to his sheep, this safe routine, and, that merchant's daughter.
He is actively trying to put the genie back in the bottle.
Exactly. He's actively choosing the comfort of what he knows. But then this old man sits down next to him on the bench.
And this isn't just some quirky local guy.
No, definitely not. This is Melchizedek, the king of Salem. And rather than just giving Santiago unsolicited advice, Melchizedek performs what is essentially a psychological intervention.
Okay, let's unpack this. What does he do?
He takes a stick and he starts writing in the sand of the plaza. And he writes things that shouldn't be possible for a stranger to know.
Like what?
He writes the names of Santiago's parents, the name of the seminary he attended. He even writes the name of the merchant's daughter.
Wait, really?
Yeah, and Santiago didn't even know her name himself. He writes down these secrets Santiago has never spoken aloud to anyone.
That's wild. So by demonstrating this impossible knowledge, Melchizedek is effectively shattering Santiago's reliance on his ordinary, predictable reality.
Exactly. He's forcing Santiago into a state of cognitive dissonance where he literally has no choice but to listen.
And what he listens to is this concept that forms really the spine of this entire deep dive, the personal legend. Melchizedek tells him that a personal legend is simply what you have always wanted to accomplish. It's that core, unshakable desire you have before the world tells you what you should want.
Right. And the old king outlines this really tragic sociological reality. He says that when we are young, everything is clear to us.
Right. Kids know what they want.
Exactly. We are deeply connected to our personal legend. We don't fear failure. We don't even understand constraints. But as time passes, this quote-unquote mysterious force begins to convince us that realizing our personal legend is actually impossible.
And we should clarify, this isn't like a villain in a cape.
No. This mysterious force is just the slow grinding erosion of daily life.
Yeah.
It's the accumulation of practicalities, it's societal expectations, the need for validation, the fear of standing out, all of that.
And this brings us to the baker. Melchizedek points across the plaza to this baker standing in the window of his shop. He tells Santiago that when that baker was a kid, he wanted to travel, just like Santiago.
Right.
But the baker looked at the world and realized that society values bakers way more than shepherds.
They do. Bakers have a stable roof. Parents want their daughters to marry bakers, not wandering shepherds.
Yeah, so the guy decided to buy a bakery, put some money aside, and just told himself that maybe when he's an old man, he'll finally spend a month in Africa.
And this is such a perfect illustration of mimetic desire.
Mimetic desire, okay.
Yeah, it's the idea that our desires are not truly our own. They are mimicked from the society around us. The baker traded his internal truth for external validation.
He prioritized what the collective thought of him over what his own soul demanded.
Exactly. He purchased social respectability, but at the cost of his own life's purpose.
Okay, I have to push back a little bit here, though.
Go for it.
Isn't that just massive survivorship bias on the part of the text? Like we are reading a fable about the one guy, the shepherd, who actually goes off and finds the gold. But what about the 1,000 other shepherds who wandered into the Sahara, lost their flock to wolves, contracted dysentery, and just died?
Right, the unseen failures.
Yeah. To play the baker's advocate here, golden handcuffs exist for a reason. They keep you from starving. Taking the safe corporate job to pay your mortgage isn't necessarily a betrayal of the soul. It's a logical sequence of survival. The baker isn't a tragic figure. He's a guy ensuring he has a pension.
I hear you. But that is the exact rationalization the mysterious force relies on. The text isn't arguing that the baker is evil or even that he is foolish in a practical sense.
Okay.
It's arguing that he's spiritually dead.
Wow.
Yeah. The survival of the physical body is guaranteed by the bakery, sure, but at what cost? Melchizedek's philosophy operates on this premise that when you have a true, deep-seated desire, that desire originated in the soul of the universe.
So it's not just a random whim.
Right. It is your specific mission on Earth. To abandon it for a pension is to fail your fundamental reason for existing. The tragedy of the baker is that he has traded the possibility of profound, transcendent fulfillment for the guarantee of, mild, persistent numbness.
Man, mild, persistent numbness. That hits hard.
Yeah.
So if that's the trap, how does the universe, or how does Melchizedek get someone to actually take that terrifying first step away from the bakery?
Right.
Because how do you overcome the sheer logical gravity of the comfort zone?
Well, the old king introduces a mechanism called the principle of favorability.
Okay.
He essentially says, look, When you first commit to your personal legend, the universe is going to rig the game in your favor. You are going to experience beginner's luck.
Beginner's luck.
Yeah, it's a fascinating psychological phenomenon. Melchizedek explains that the universe actively wants you to succeed because your success is tied to the evolution of the soul of the world. So it gives you an initial taste of victory to kind of whet your appetite. It's the reason why, when you sit down at a poker table for the very first time, you often win. The universe conspires to pull you onto the path.
Okay, let's strip the mysticism out of that for just a second, because I think there is an incredibly solid behavioral mechanism at play here too.
Oh, totally.
When you try something completely new, your brain is entirely engaged. Your reticular activating system, the part of your brain that filters information, is suddenly hyper-tuned to this new goal. You aren't operating on autopilot anymore.
You're paying attention.
Exactly. You're noticing opportunities and connections and paths that were always there, but that you just previously ignored because they weren't relevant to your routine. So beginner's luck isn't necessarily magic. It's the sudden, explosive application of pure, unjaded focus.
I love that. Regardless of whether you view it as a mystical force or a neurological awakening, the result is the same, right? You get a push.
Yeah.
But Melchizedek doesn't just give Santiago a pep talk, he demands collateral. He tells Santiago to follow the omens, and he gives him 2 stones from his own golden breastplate. Urim, which is a white stone meaning no, and Thummim, a black stone meaning yes.
For reading omens.
Exactly. But to get this guidance, Melchizedek charges Santiago 1/10 of his entire flock of sheep.
Which seems incredibly harsh. I mean, the guy's a literal king. He doesn't need 6 sheep.
He really doesn't. But Melchizedek explains the psychology behind the fee. He says that if you promise to pay for something with what you do not even possess yet, you will lose your desire to work toward getting it.
It is the ultimate lesson in having skin in the game.
Absolutely. Commitment requires sacrifice. If you only pursue your dreams when it is convenient or, free, you will abandon them at the first sign of friction. By taking the sheep, Melchizedek forces Santiago to burn a bridge to his past.
He's no longer a shepherd with a full flock.
Right. He has paid a price. He is now an investor in his own unknown future.
So Santiago takes the leap. He sells the rest of his sheep, he leaves his country, gets on a boat, and crosses the strait to Tangier in North Africa. He lands on a totally different continent with his money, his stones, his jacket, and his book. He has officially defeated the comfort zone.
He's done it.
He is on the path. And almost immediately, within literally hours of arriving, the universe just hits him with a baseball bat.
Oh, yeah. Because the harsh reality of the principle of favorability is that beginner's luck is merely bait.
Just bait.
It is designed to get you out the door. Once you are actually on the path, the training wheels come off and the brutal testing of your resolve begins.
Right. So he arrives in Tangier, unable to speak a single word of Arabic. He's completely disoriented. He wanders into a bar, feels incredibly out of place, and is instantly targeted. A young local guy who speaks Spanish approaches him, acts like a friend, and promises to help him buy camels to cross the desert to Egypt. So they go to this bustling market, and the exact second Santiago takes his eyes off his new quote-unquote friend to look at a beautiful sword on display, the guy vanishes.
Gone.
He takes every single cent Santiago made from selling his flock. He is robbed blind.
It is absolute devastation. And the text paints such a visceral picture of this. Santiago sits in the empty marketplace as the sun goes down, just weeping. He feels that God is fundamentally unfair.
Yeah.
He reflects on how, just yesterday he was a respected shepherd with a flock and a place in the world, and today he is entirely destitute in a strange land.
A massive fall.
And he makes a very specific, dark psychological choice in that moment. He decides that because he was betrayed, he is going to hate the world.
Wow.
He decides he will become a bitter, suspicious person, and that he will actively hate anyone who manages to find their treasure simply because he lost his.
That is such a deeply human reaction, though. It is the crystallization of the victim mindset.
Yeah.
And from a psychological standpoint, it makes total sense. When your locus of control, your belief in your ability to influence your own life is shattered by an external event like a robbery, the easiest defense mechanism is to build a wall of bitterness.
It's protective.
Exactly. If the world is rigged, then it's not your fault you failed. The victim mindset is incredibly warm and comforting when you are freezing in the dark.
It really is. But staying in that mindset is a death sentence for a personal legend. The turning point happens the next morning.
What does he do?
Santiago reaches into his empty pouch and feels the 2 stones, Urim and Thummim. And touching them reminds him of the old king. And it triggers this massive cognitive reframe.
A reframe book.
He looks around the marketplace, and instead of seeing the scene of his destruction, he realizes something profoundly liberating. He no longer has to worry about finding water or pasture for his sheep.
Oh, wow.
The burden of his past life has been forcibly removed.
Right. So he realizes that the lens through which he views his reality is entirely under his control. He can look at himself as the poor, pathetic victim of a thief, or he can look at himself as an adventurer who is temporarily out of funds on a grand quest for treasure. He actively chooses the identity of the adventurer.
This shift from an external locus of control, things happen to me, to an internal locus of control, I determine the meaning of what happens to me is the actual first step of his transformation.
It pulls him out of the paralysis.
Exactly. He starts walking the streets, looking for a way to survive, and eventually climbs this massive hill where he finds a struggling crystal shop. And he offers to clean the dusty crystal in the window display in exchange for just a meal.
And as he is cleaning the glass, 2 customers happen to walk in and buy crystal.
The beginner's luck echoes again. The crystal merchant, who has been watching his business slowly die for decades, sees this influx of customers as a good omen. So he feeds Santiago and offers him a job.
And this introduces us to a character who is perhaps the most important cautionary tale in the entire narrative. The crystal merchant is Santiago's shadow self. He is everything Santiago could become if he gives in to fear.
Let's really look at the dynamics of this crystal shop. The merchant has been sitting at the top of this steep hill for 30 years.
30 years?
30 years. The city of Tangier expanded in a completely different direction. The foot traffic dried up, and he stayed there.
He's the embodiment of stagnation.
Yes. Santiago, on the other hand, is highly motivated. He wants to earn enough money to buy a new flock of sheep and go home. So Santiago starts looking at the business with fresh eyes. He suggests building an outdoor display case to catch the attention of people at the bottom of the hill.
And the merchant immediately resists.
Right. His response is incredibly telling. He says, I'm already used to the way things are. He doesn't want the display case because if the business grows, he will have to adapt. He will have to change his daily rhythms. The merchant prefers the slow, predictable death of his business over the chaotic, unpredictable nature of growth.
But Santiago pushes through and builds the case anyway. He operates using what the text calls the language of enthusiasm.
I love that phrase.
It's great, right? It's the idea that when you do something with absolute purpose and love, it communicates across all linguistic barriers. The display case is built and business begins to boom.
But Santiago doesn't stop there. He notices that the people who do climb the steep hill to the shop arrive exhausted and thirsty, so he pitches a radical idea. Why not sell them refreshing mint tea?
Which, to be fair, is a dime a dozen idea in Morocco.
Oh, totally. But Santiago adds the hook. He says, sell the mint tea served in the beautiful crystal glasses.
Oh, that's smart.
Right. The customers will climb the hill, buy the delicious tea to refresh themselves, realize how exquisite the crystal glass feels in their hand, and they will buy the glass. It is a brilliant experiential marketing strategy.
And once again, the merchant is terrified of the idea.
Terrified.
Because he knows it will work. And that is exactly why he fears it. If they sell tea in the crystal, the shop will expand exponentially. He'll have to hire more staff. His entire way of life will be completely upended. And this friction between Santiago's relentless forward momentum and the merchant's desperate need for stasis brings out the core philosophy of the merchant's life.
Yeah, the merchant finally explains his resistance. He tells Santiago that as a devout Muslim, he has a religious obligation to make a pilgrimage to Mecca.
It's the 5th pillar of his faith.
Exactly. He has dreamed of this trip his entire life. When he was young, he started the shop to save money for the journey. He has enough money now, he could leave tomorrow.
But he refuses to go.
He refuses, and the psychology here is just staggering. The merchant confesses, it's the thought of Mecca that keeps me alive. That's what helps me face these days that are all the same, these mute crystals on the shelves, and lunch and dinner at that same horrible cafe. And then he says, I'm afraid that if my dream is realized, I'll have no reason to go on living.
He is using his dream not as a destination, but as an anesthetic.
Yes.
It is a coping mechanism to survive a miserable reality. He prefers to live in the fantasy of Mecca because the fantasy is flawless. It demands absolutely nothing of him. If he actually goes, he might be disappointed.
A journey might be hard.
The journey might be hard. But worse than that, if he achieves his life's ultimate goal, what then? What do you do on the morning after your greatest achievement? He is terrified of the void that follows success.
It is the ultimate tragedy of human potential. The merchant understands his own failure perfectly, too. He admits to Santiago that every blessing ignored becomes a curse.
Every blessing ignored becomes a curse. That is a heavy line.
It's so true, though. By expanding the shop, Santiago is forcing the merchant to look at wealth and possibilities he had spent 30 years successfully ignoring. The merchant realizes the immense scope of what he could have accomplished, and it makes him profoundly depressed because he knows he actively chose not to do it. So he hides behind this Arabic concept of maktub.
Maktub, which roughly translates to, it is written.
Right. It's the concept of fate.
But what's fascinating is how these two characters use the exact same word to justify entirely opposite behaviors.
Precisely. For the merchant, maktub is an excuse for paralysis. If everything is already written, why bother struggling? Why risk change? The script is finished, so he might as well just sit in his shop and wait for the end.
And for Santiago?
For Santiago, maktub means that the omens are part of a divine language. If the universe has written a path for him, his active duty is to read the signs and walk it. One uses fate as a shield, the other uses it as a compass.
So what does this all mean for Santiago? This clash of philosophies leads to a massive crossroads for him. He works for the merchant for 11 months. The mint tea in crystal glasses is a phenomenal success. Santiago makes a fortune.
A literal fortune.
He makes enough money to buy double his original flock of sheep, plus a return ticket to Spain. He has essentially won. He completely recovered from the robbery and then some. He could go home right now, buy a sheep, and be a wealthy, highly respected man in his village. And as he is packing his bags, he hesitates.
Yeah, this is the inversion of the sunk cost fallacy.
Explain that.
Well, normally people stay in a bad situation, a failing business, a toxic relationship, because they have already invested so much time or money. They're paralyzed by what they have lost. Santiago is in the exact opposite position. He's paralyzed by what he has gained.
He's wealthy now.
Right. If he goes back to Spain, he is guaranteed a wonderful life. If he leaves his bags, walks out the door, and buys a camel to cross the Sahara Desert toward Egypt, he is risking his life, his new fortune, and his comfort, all for a dream he had over a year ago.
So why keep going? Why walk away from a guaranteed win? Why risk the desert?
He risks it because of the omens. As he is packing, Urim and Thummim fall out of his jacket. The physical touch of the stones brings the presence of the old king rushing back. Santiago realizes a profound truth about his own capacity.
What does he realize?
He looks back at the past year. He conquered Tangier. He arrived penniless and unable to speak the language. And he turned a dying shop into a massive success. He learned Arabic. He learned the language of enthusiasm. He realizes that he can always go back to being a shepherd. He already knows how to do that. He knows how to sell crystal.
But if he goes back to Spain now, he will become exactly like the crystal merchant.
Exactly. He will spend the rest of his life staring at his sheep, knowing he backed down from his personal legend. The opportunity cost of his soul is simply too high.
So in a massive display of psychological courage, he leaves the money, he leaves the shop, and he does not buy the ticket to Spain. He goes to a warehouse and joins a caravan that is preparing to cross the Sahara Desert.
He chooses the terrifying unknown.
Yes. And this shifts us to a completely different environment and introduces a completely different obstacle. We've established that comfort is the enemy of the personal legend. But what about over-preparation? What about the illusion of knowledge?
Oh, this is good. The caravan introduces us to a character who perfectly embodies this new obstacle, the Englishman.
The Englishman. This guy is a piece of work.
He really is.
He shows up to the desert caravan with literal trunks full of books. This guy is a professional student. He has spent 10 years at university, he inherited a massive fortune, and he blew it all trying to find the one true universal language.
Right.
He studied Esperanto, he studied world religions, and now he has dedicated his life to the pursuit of alchemy. He is on this specific caravan because he heard a rumor that a 200-year-old alchemist lives at an oasis called Al Fayoum, right in the middle of the Sahara.
The Englishman represents the traditional academic approach to mastery. He believes that knowledge is hidden inside complex texts, locked behind arcane terminology, and only accessible through rigorous step-by-step intellectual deciphering.
For him, the world is a library, and the answer is always in the next book.
Exactly. And as the caravan begins its trek across the brutal landscape of the Sahara, the Englishman barely looks up. He spends every waking hour with his nose buried in his alchemy texts.
Meanwhile, Santiago tries to read the one book he brought with him for a few days, but he just can't focus. He eventually throws the book away, deciding it is an unnecessary physical and mental burden. Instead of reading, he looks at the sand, he watches the camels, he listens to the wind, he strikes up a friendship with his camel driver.
We are seeing a real-time debate between the epistemology of the intellect and the epistemology of experience.
Okay, those are big words. Break that down.
So the Englishman is obsessed with understanding the theory of the masterwork of alchemy. He wants to know the exact chemical formulas to create the philosopher's stone, which purifies base metals like lead into gold, and the elixir of life, which cures all diseases.
He wants the data.
Right. He is seeking power through the accumulation of data. Santiago, however, is learning through observation and integration. He realizes that the caravan and the desert speak a silent language. If the caravan moves in rhythm with the desert, understanding its dunes and its winds, the desert allows them to pass. If the caravan attempts to fight or ignore the desert destroys it.
This dynamic is so relevant to today. Here's where it gets really interesting, because the Englishman is the patron saint of what modern developers and creatives call tutorial hell.
Oh yes, tutorial hell.
It's a massive psychological trap. You decide you want to learn how to code or start a business or get in shape. So what do? You buy 10 books, you subscribe to 5 podcasts, you watch 50 hours of YouTube tutorials.
And you feel incredibly productive.
Right. You feel productive because you are accumulating information. But you never actually write a single line of code. You never launch the product. You never pick up a dumbbell. You substitute the preparation for the work, because preparation feels like progress, but carries zero risk of failure.
That is so true. The Englishman has read every book on alchemy in existence, but he has never tried to turn lead into gold. He is trapped in the safety of theory.
Exactly. And the irony, which the text highlights beautifully, is that the ultimate truth of alchemy isn't complicated at all. The Englishman admits this himself.
He does. He tells Santiago that the most important text in the entire history of alchemy is not a 1,000-page encyclopedia. It consists of only a few lines, and it is inscribed on the surface of a single jewel. It is called the Emerald Tablet.
And the core tenet of the Emerald Tablet is devastatingly simple. All things are the manifestation of one thing only. It's the idea of complete underlying unity in the universe. So Santiago, employing basic common sense, asks the Englishman, well, if it's just a few lines on a tablet, why do we need all these trunks of books?
And the Englishman's answer is incredibly defensive. He says, so that we can understand those few lines.
Typical.
Right. But Santiago looks at the Englishman's books filled with strange drawings, bizarre codes, and endless complications, and he sees exactly what they are. They are a shield.
A shield from what?
Men complicate simple truths, because if a truth is simple, you have no excuse for not living by it. If achieving your goal only requires immense discipline and action, that's terrifying. But if it requires deciphering 10 years of complex codes, you can hide in the deciphering forever.
Santiago comes to a radical conclusion here. He realizes that alchemy isn't really about chemistry in a laboratory. It isn't a physical science. It is a spiritual metaphor.
Yes.
The process of heating a metal for years to strip away its impurities until only the pure soul of the world is left. That is exactly what Santiago is doing to himself. He realizes that cleansing the crystal glasses back in Tangier was an alchemical process of purifying his own mind from the negative victim mentality he held after being robbed. He is turning his own lead into gold.
That's a beautiful way to put it. But their philosophical debates are abruptly shut down by a very stark reality.
War.
The caravan leader calls a halt and announces that rumors of violent tribal wars are spreading through the desert. The landscape instantly changes from a classroom into a war zone.
The threat of violent tribal wars forces the caravan to travel in complete silence and darkness.
They move only at night. They're forbidden to light fires lest they attract raiding parties. The intellectual theories of the Englishman are completely stripped away by the imminent threat of death.
This is where Santiago's experiential learning really shines. He talks to his camel driver, who offers this incredibly pure, stoic perspective born out of absolute necessity. The camel driver says, if I have to fight, it will be just as good a day to die as any other because I don't live in either my past or my future. I'm interested only in the present. If you can concentrate always on the present, you'll be a happy man.
It is mindfulness stripped of its modern spa day aesthetic.
Exactly.
It is mindfulness as a survival mechanism. If you focus on the terror of tomorrow's potential ambush, you will panic and die today. The desert enforces presence.
So finally, after weeks of this grueling, terrifying, silent travel, they see a line of stars low on the horizon. Those stars turn out to be the tops of date palms. They have finally reached the safety of the Al Fayoum oasis.
And it is here, in this sanctuary, that the purely intellectual and physical journey suddenly crashes into the most complicated human emotion possible.
Love.
But to understand the stakes of what happens next, we have to understand the geography of the oasis. It is not a small puddle surrounded by a few trees. It is massive.
Yeah, 50,000 date palms.
50,000 palm trees, 300 wells. It is a city of tents. More importantly, under the strict rules of the desert, the oasis is a designated neutral zone. Because it shelters women and children, no armies are allowed to enter, and no one is allowed to carry a weapon inside its borders. It is an absolute safe haven in the middle of a brutal war.
And the caravan leader informs them that because the tribal wars are escalating, the caravan cannot proceed. They're indefinitely stuck at the oasis until the conflict ends. The Englishman is thrilled, of course. He immediately drags Santiago around the oasis, desperately asking everyone where the 200-year-old alchemist lives.
But no one seems to know what an alchemist even is. Finally, they decide to wait by one of the wells and ask the people coming to draw water.
And this is where the narrative axis completely shifts. A young woman approaches the well with a vessel. Her name is Fatima. And the moment Santiago sees her, the entire world stops.
It's love at first sight, but, and we need to be clear here, it's not in a superficial way.
Right.
The text frames this moment through the lens of the universal language. The text argues that love is the oldest, purest, most unadulterated part of the language of the world. It requires no translation and no explanation. When Santiago looks into Fatima's eyes, he doesn't just see a pretty girl. He sees the culmination of his entire life's journey.
He realizes that every single thing that has happened to him, losing the sheep, the old king, the robbery, the crystal shop, the terrifying desert crossing, was simply a chain of events architected by the universe to put him in front of this specific well at this specific second.
He is entirely overwhelmed. Within days, he is proposing to her.
He moves fast.
Very fast. He tells her the absolute truth. He crossed the desert in search of a hidden treasure near the pyramids, but the treasure no longer matters. She is his treasure. He wants to abandon his quest, stay at the oasis, and marry her. He has found his ultimate comfort.
But Fatima presents a fascinating paradox here, because the traditional romantic narrative says that love is about proximity, right? It's about possession.
Yeah.
I love you, therefore you must stay with me.
Exactly.
But Fatima completely rejects this.
She does. She tells him she is a woman of the desert. And as a woman of the desert, she has been raised to watch her men leave. She knows they must wander to find their purpose.
Wow.
She tells Santiago that he must continue his journey to the pyramids. She says, if I'm really a part of your dream, you'll come back one day.
Think about the immense psychological maturity of that statement. She understands that if she begs him to stay, she might keep his physical body at the oasis, but she will kill his soul. True love, according to this philosophy, does not constrain someone from their personal legend. It acts as a catalyst for it.
Right. True love wants the beloved to be as free as the wind. If love holds you back from your ultimate purpose, it isn't the pure language of the world. It is merely fear and possession masquerading as affection.
It is an agonizing test for Santiago, though. He finally finds profound, reciprocal love, and the object of that love immediately tells him to walk back out into a desert filled with warring tribes to chase a dream he isn't even sure is real.
It's heartbreaking, and he's just wandering the outskirts of the oasis, staring out at the dunes, wrestling with this impossible choice. And while he is sitting there trying to process his emotions, he observes two hawks flying high in the sky above him.
He is just watching them drift, trying to find some peace in their movement, and suddenly he experiences a massive physiological and spiritual shift. The text describes it as an immersion of the soul into the universal current of life.
He isn't just watching the birds anymore. He is suddenly connected to the underlying code of the environment.
One of the hawks makes a sudden, flashing dive, attacking the other hawk in midair. And in that exact fraction of a second, Santiago has a vivid, terrifying, almost hallucinatory vision. He sees an army riding into the peaceful, neutral oasis with swords drawn, slaughtering the inhabitants.
And what is happening here is the ultimate expression of reading the omens. From a psychological standpoint, you can view this as extreme subconscious pattern recognition.
Subconscious pattern recognition, that makes sense.
Yeah. The human brain processes millions of bits of environmental data every second, but the conscious mind only processes a tiny fraction of that. Santiago has spent months completely immersed in the silence and rhythms of the desert. He has learned its language.
The language without words.
Exactly. The sudden violence of the hawks acts as a trigger, allowing his subconscious, which has picked up on subtle shifts in the environment, the movement of tribes, the tension in the air, to push a warning into his conscious mind in the form of a vision.
He knows it's an omen, so he runs to his camel driver, who validates it. The camel driver explains that the desert sometimes reveals the future, but it only does so if that future has been written so that it can be altered. He tells Santiago he must go and warn the tribal chieftains.
This is a moment of monumental risk. Santiago is a foreigner. He's a shepherd from Spain. He is going to walk into the massive, luxurious tent of the tribal elders, men who have survived decades of brutal desert politics, and tell them that a couple of birds told him an army is coming to break the sacred neutrality of the oasis.
I mean, it sounds crazy.
It does. He goes to the tent. He tells them his vision. The elders are furious. They argue amongst themselves. Why would the desert speak to a foreign boy instead of to them?
Right, their egos are bruised.
But the head chieftain, an ancient, intimidating man, raises his hand. He references the biblical story of Joseph, a foreigner who interpreted the Pharaoh's dreams in Egypt and saved the nation from famine.
Okay, so there's precedent.
Exactly. The chieftain decides that tradition dictates they must listen to the messages of the desert, regardless of the messenger, so he makes a shocking decision. He orders the men of the oasis to break the sacred law. Tomorrow, they will arm themselves.
But there is a catch.
Oh, there is a massive catch. The chieftain is not a fool, and he issues a terrifying ultimatum. He tells Santiago that arms are capricious things. Once a sword is drawn from its scabbard, it demands blood before it can be put back. So the chieftain makes a deal.
The ultimatum.
Right. If the enemy army attacks tomorrow, as Santiago predicted, Santiago will be rewarded with a piece of gold for every 10 dead enemies. But if the sun sets tomorrow and no attack has happened, the weapons that were drawn will be used on Santiago. He will be killed.
I want to pause here. I want the listener to really put themselves in Santiago's shoes for a second. You have a fortune in gold from the crystal shop. You just found the literal love of your life, and she loves you back. You are sitting in the middle of a heavily guarded, supposedly neutral safe zone. Why on earth would you risk execution over a hunch you got from watching some birds fight?
It's insane.
It's the ultimate test of trusting your own internal intuition over external safety. He is betting his life, not his money, his actual life, on his ability to read the soul of the world.
And what's amazing is, as he walks back to his tent that night under the stars, he actually finds peace with his decision. He realizes that even if he is executed tomorrow, he has lived a richer life than he ever could have imagined.
You really have.
He crossed the strait. He conquered a foreign city. He learned the silence of the desert. He looked into Fatima's eyes. He is fully engaged with the world. He has no regrets.
The tension is incredible. And it doesn't even wait for morning. Suddenly, a massive wind sweeps through the camp, throwing Santiago to the ground. A terrifying horseman appears out of the dust. He's dressed completely in black. A massive falcon is perched on his left shoulder, and he draws a massive, curved sword.
Just an intimidating figure.
Right. And the horseman demands, in a voice that echoes like thunder, to know who dared to read the flight of the hawks and alter the course of destiny.
And Santiago doesn't cower. He accepts his fate. He stands up, looks at the horseman, and says it was him.
And then the horseman charges and lowers the massive sword until the tip of the blade rests perfectly between Santiago's eyes, literally drawing a single drop of blood.
The horseman interrogates him. He asks why Santiago defied the will of Allah by trying to change the future.
And Santiago, bleeding, just calmly replies that Allah created the birds, Allah created the armies, and everything is written by the exact same hand. He isn't defying the will, he is participating in it.
And that answer changes everything. The horseman slowly withdraws his sword. The terrifying demeanor vanishes. He tells Santiago that courage is the single most essential quality required to understand the language of the world. He says he had to test Santiago's resolve.
And then he drops this casual invitation. If Santiago survives the battle tomorrow, he should come find him.
And as the horseman rides away, pointing his sword toward the south of the camp, Santiago realizes the absolute absurdity of the situation. He just met the alchemist.
The man he didn't even know he was looking for.
Exactly. The mythical 200-year-old master that the Englishman spent his entire life, his entire fortune, and trunks full of books trying to find, just tracked down a Spanish shepherd in the middle of the night. Why? Because Santiago was actually out reading the desert while the Englishman was sitting in his tent reading a book.
So the next morning, the attack actually happens exactly as predicted. 500 armed tribesmen attack the oasis expecting a slaughter, but because they were warned, the men of the oasis have set an ambush.
Right.
Within hours, the attacking force is completely wiped out.
And true to his word, the chieftain rewards Santiago with 50 pieces of gold and elevates him to the position of counselor of the oasis. He is a hero.
So let's tally the score here. Santiago survived. He is now incredibly rich again. He holds immense political power at the oasis. And he has Fatima. He has built a paradise.
But the alchemist isn't going to let him get comfortable. He is about to initiate the final, most brutal leg of the journey.
Right. Santiago rides out to the alchemist's tent. The alchemist gets right to the point. He tells Santiago that he is going to act as his guide, and they are going to cross the final, most dangerous stretch of the war-torn desert to reach the pyramids.
And Santiago immediately balks. He uses the exact same logic he used in Tangier. He says, I've already found my treasure, I have gold, I have power, and I have Fatima.
And the alchemist doesn't argue. He just systematically dismantles Santiago's future if he chooses to stay. It is a chilling projection.
It really is. He tells Santiago that for the first year, things will be perfect. He will be deeply in love with Fatima, and he will be a respected counselor.
Okay, sounds good so far.
Right, but during the second year, the memory of his treasure will start to creep back. He will try to ignore the omens, burying himself in his work. By the third year, the omens will become a plague. He will walk the sands at night, tormented by what he abandoned. Fatima will notice, and she will feel profound guilt, believing her love is the cage that trapped him.
Ouch.
And by the fourth year, the omens will realize he isn't listening, and they will abandon him entirely. The chieftains will sense his loss of intuition and dismiss him from his post. He will spend the rest of his life as a wealthy, bitter merchant, knowing he was a coward who refused his destiny.
The alchemist is holding up a mirror to the crystal merchant here. He is showing Santiago that comfort without purpose eventually rots.
Yes, and Santiago admits the truth. His heart is fearful, it is treacherous, it doesn't want to leave Fatima, and it absolutely doesn't want to suffer in the desert.
And here, the alchemist delivers one of the most profound psychological truths of the entire text. He says, tell your heart that the fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself, and that no heart has ever suffered when it goes in search of its dreams.
The fear of suffering is worse than the suffering itself.
Let's map that onto modern psychology. This is anticipatory anxiety.
Exactly.
How many people stay in dead-end jobs, toxic relationships, or just utterly stagnant lives simply because they are terrified of the pain of the transition? We imagine the worst-case scenario. We imagine the humiliation of failure. We let the anticipation of pain torture us for years. The alchemist is saying that once you actually make the jump, once you're in motion toward your true purpose, the suffering isn't debilitating anymore because the pain suddenly has meaning.
So Santiago makes the hardest choice of his life. He goes to Fatima, tells her he is leaving, and rides out into the active war zone with the alchemist.
And as they ride, the alchemist's primary lesson is teaching Santiago to listen to his heart constantly, to understand its fears and its tricks so that it can never deceive him. But the ultimate test of this spiritual alignment arrives violently when they are intercepted by a massive, heavily armed tribal encampment.
This is the climax of the narrative, and the stakes are unfathomably high. They are dragged before the tribal general, who is convinced they are enemy spies. To buy their lives, the alchemist reaches into Santiago's pouch and hands the general all of Santiago's gold.
Everything.
Every single piece he earned at the crystal shop and all the gold he was awarded at the oasis, it is all gone in a second.
But the alchemist goes a step further, and this is where he seemingly loses his mind. He tells the general that Santiago is a legendary sorcerer. He claims that Santiago has the power to destroy the entire military camp by turning himself into the wind.
Turning himself into the wind.
Yes. He tells the general that Santiago will demonstrate this power in 3 days. And if he fails, the general can execute them both.
And Santiago is in a state of absolute sheer terror. He has no idea how to turn into the wind. He has never performed magic. He corners the alchemist and screams at him, saying he isn't an alchemist, he's just a shepherd.
And what does the alchemist say?
The alchemist remains perfectly calm and says, if a person is living out his personal legend, he knows everything he needs to know. The only thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve is the fear of failure.
This is the ultimate terrifying teaching method. It is a psychological forcing function. Let's look at the mechanics of a forcing function. If you want to take an island, you land your troops on the shore, and then you burn your own boats.
Right, so you can't retreat.
Exactly. When retreat is literally impossible, The human brain stops wasting energy panicking about how to escape, and it immediately bypasses normal cognitive limits to access radical lateral problem solving. By putting a 3-day ticking clock on Santiago's life, the alchemist is using the absolute terror of imminent death as a pressure cooker. He is forcing Santiago's soul to evolve. He is forcing the spiritual lead to become gold.
For 2 days, Santiago does nothing but sit on a cliff overlooking the desert, staring out at the horizon, completely terrified. On the 3rd day, the general and his commanders gather at the base of the cliff, mocking him, waiting for the execution.
And what follows is a deeply philosophical, elemental dialogue that represents Santiago's ultimate mastery of the language of the world. He begins by speaking to the desert.
He doesn't cast a spell, he just talks to the sand. He tells the desert about his love for Fatima, and he asks the desert to give him its sand so he can become the wind and return to her.
And the desert acknowledges his love, but admits its power is static. It cannot generate the momentum required. It tells him to ask the wind.
So Santiago shifts his focus to the wind, and the wind is arrogant. It blows across the entire world, and it believes it knows everything.
But Santiago challenges it. He tells the wind that while it knows how to move, it knows absolutely nothing about love. He explains that when you are loved, you can do anything in creation because love is the force that connects the disparate parts of the universe.
The wind realizes it doesn't know how to turn a man into the wind. Humbled, but wanting to help, the wind blows up a massive, blinding sandstorm, a summum, to completely blot out the sun, allowing Santiago to look up and speak directly to the sun without being blinded.
The conversation with the sun is the philosophical peak of the entire book. It explores the limits of macro-level wisdom. The sun is proud. It says it observes the entire earth, it provides the heat that sustains life, and it understands the soul of the world perfectly because it watches it from afar.
But Santiago points out the flaw in the sun's perspective. He says the sun doesn't truly understand love because it is distant. Love isn't just observation. Love isn't static like the desert, or chaotic like the wind, or distant like the sun.
Santiago argues that love is the active evolutionary force of the universe. He says the only reason alchemy exists is so that every single thing, whether it's a piece of lead or a shepherd from Spain, can search for its ultimate treasure, find it, and then evolve into something better than it was before. Love is the mechanism of transformation.
And the sun, the ultimate symbol of light and knowledge, realizes that its wisdom has limits. It cannot perform the miracle. It tells Santiago he must speak to the hand that wrote all.
And at this point, the dialogue ceases. Santiago realizes that the desert, the wind, and the sun are not gods. They're just physical manifestations of the universe, all seeking to understand the same divine signs. He stops asking for help from the elements. He drops into a state of profound, silent prayer. He reaches completely through to the soul of the world.
He realizes that the soul of the world is inextricably connected to the soul of God. And in a moment of ultimate spiritual integration, he realizes that the soul of God is his own soul. And because he is one with the Creator, he can perform miracles.
The wind howls with a force the desert has never seen. The commanders are terrified. When the massive sandstorm finally clears, the cliff where Santiago was standing is completely empty.
He's gone.
The general looks around in shock, and they find Santiago standing beside a sentinel, completely unharmed, on the far side of the military camp. He literally rode the wind.
The tribal general is so terrified and so awed by this undeniable display of the glory of God that he immediately cancels the execution. He lets them go and even provides them with an armed escort to ensure they safely cross the remaining desert. Santiago has passed the final, impossible test.
Having passed this brutal test a few days later, they reach a quiet Coptic monastery. The alchemist borrows the kitchen, fires up the furnace, takes out a sliver of the actual philosopher's stone, and drops it into a pan of melted lead. The lead turns into a solid disc of pure gold.
The real physical alchemy.
Right. He breaks it into 4 pieces. He gives one to the monk for his hospitality. He gives one to Santiago to replace the gold the general took. He keeps one for himself, and he gives the final piece to the monk to hold for Santiago, just in case. And then the alchemist mounts his horse, tells Santiago he must walk the final 3 hours alone, and rides away.
Which brings us to the final brilliant twists of the narrative, the destination and the real treasure.
Santiago walks the final 3 hours through the dunes. As he crests a massive hill, he finally sees them. The pyramids of Egypt, illuminated by the full moon, the majesty of it breaks him. He falls to his knees and weeps with absolute gratitude.
He remembers the alchemist's final piece of advice. Be aware of the place where you were brought to tears. That's where your treasure is.
As he is crying, He sees a scarab beetle, a sacred symbol of God in Egypt, scuttling through the sand exactly where his tears fell. So he starts digging.
He digs with his bare hands throughout the entire night. He hits nothing but sand and rocks. And then the universe delivers its final, brutal irony. As he is deep in the hole, several refugees from the tribal wars emerge from the dark vest. They are desperate, violent men.
They pull him out of the hole, search his pockets, and find the piece of gold the alchemist gave him. Assuming he has more gold buried in the sand, they beat him relentlessly. They beat him until he is nearly dead.
Lying there, spitting blood into the sand, facing death one final time, Santiago remembers what the alchemist taught him about the fear of death. He stops trying to protect his secret. He screams at the men that he has no more gold. He yells that he is only digging here because he crossed an entire desert based on a recurring dream about a hidden treasure at the pyramids.
And the leader of the refugees stops beating him. He looks at Santiago, bruised and broken in the dirt, and he laughs. A cruel, mocking laugh.
The leader leans down and says, "You're not going to die, but you are going to learn not to be so stupid."
And he reveals that 2 years ago, right on this exact spot, he also had a recurring dream. The leader dreamed that he should travel across the sea to Spain, find a ruined village church where shepherds bring their sheep to sleep, and dig at the roots of a giant sycamore tree growing right through the floor of the sacristy because a massive treasure was buried there.
The leader shakes his head in disgust and says, "But I'm not so stupid as to cross an entire desert just because of a recurrent dream." He takes his men and leaves Santiago bleeding in the sand.
And Santiago, broken, exhausted, and robbed once again, looks up at the majestic pyramids and he begins to laugh. A deep, joyous laugh that echoes across the desert. Because he suddenly understands the magnificent cosmic joke. He realizes the truth. The physical treasure, a literal chest filled with ancient Spanish gold coins and precious jewels, was buried under the exact sycamore tree where he was sleeping with his sheep on page 1 of the book. The treasure was in Spain the entire time.
It is the ultimate inversion of the hero's journey. It's Dorothy realizing she had the ruby slippers all along. The physical gold was literally at his starting line.
So the obvious frustrating question is, if the gold was in Spain, why did the universe send him to Egypt? Why subject him to robbery, war, the desert, and nearly getting executed? If Melchizedek knew everything, why didn't the old king just say, "Hey kid, bring a shovel, it's under the tree"?
Because if Melchizedek had told him, Santiago would have dug up the chest, and he would have been nothing more than a very wealthy, highly ignorant shepherd. He wouldn't have been psychologically or spiritually equipped to handle the treasure or to understand his place in the world. The journey was never about the geographic coordinates of the gold. It was about the required alchemy of his own soul.
To become the man who deserved the treasure, he had to lose his money in Tangier.
Yes!
He had to learn the language of the world from the crystal merchant. He had to face the terror of the desert to learn courage. He had to learn the true, liberating nature of love from Fatima. And he had to be pushed to the absolute brink of death by the alchemist to learn how to connect with the soul of God.
The physical gold was in Spain, but the spiritual gold could only be forged in the extreme pressure of the Sahara. You cannot inherit a personal legend. You have to become the person capable of holding it.
The narrative concludes with Santiago returning to Spain. He goes back to the ruined church, digs at the roots of the sycamore tree, and pulls up a massive chest of Spanish gold. He pays his 1/10 tithes to the gypsy, fulfilling his promise. And as he stands there, a warm Levanter wind blows in from Africa, carrying the distinct scent of Fatima's perfume. He smiles and says, "I'm coming, Fatima."
It is a flawless synthesis of the book's philosophy. A personal legend is not a comfortable linear path to a geographic destination. It is a brutal, beautiful process of psychological dismantling and spiritual reconstruction.
As the alchemist warned him, before a dream is realized, the soul of the world tests everything that was learned along the way. It doesn't test you to punish you. It tests you to ensure you have actually mastered the lessons so that when you finally hold the treasure, it doesn't destroy you.
If we step back and look at the architecture of this entire story, I want to elevate the final point. Think about that refugee leader at the pyramids.
Yeah, that guy.
That man is Santiago's ultimate shadow. That refugee had the exact same access to the soul of the world. He received the exact same omens. He had the exact same dream. What separates them? It isn't resources. It is an intelligence. The text introduces a concept we might call the illusion of asymmetric insight. The refugee believed he was smarter than the universe. He thought his cynicism was wisdom. He believed that dismissing his dream as stupid made him safe.
And it did make him safe from the journey. But it doomed him to a life of violence and bitterness in the desert, while the treasure rotted beneath a tree in Spain. The only difference between a life of deep, cynical regret and a realized personal legend isn't the absence of fear. It's simply the willingness to look incredibly stupid, cross the terrifying desert, and start digging.
Exactly. The tragedy is proximity blindness. We are so close to our own potential that we can't see it. We assume the treasure must be impossibly far away, or that it requires a map we don't possess. But the map is written in the omens of our daily lives. The universe is constantly conspiring to point us toward our purpose if we only have the courage to read the signs.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, the final question isn't about Santiago, it's about you. What is the sycamore tree in your own backyard? What is the profound, irrational dream you have been actively ignoring, rationalizing away, or deferring until retirement, simply because you are terrified of the person you will have to become to go get it? The gold is waiting. The only question is whether you're willing to walk through the fire to earn it.